Welcome back to N's NotebookLM, where we dig into the big ideas from some amazing sources. Today, we're talking about Scott Jurek, an absolute legend in the world of ultramarathon running. But here's the thing. His story doesn't start at the top of a mountain. To really get it, you have to see where he came from. He wasn't some natural-born champion. Nope. In his own words, he was
common as grass. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. We're not talking about a prodigy here, not some star athlete from day one. We're talking about a skinny kid that other kids called Pee-wee, who had high blood pressure.
So the big question is, how do you go from that to becoming a legend in what is arguably one of the toughest sports on the planet? Well, as we dug into his story, we found that his whole incredible transformation really boils down to three core pillars.
All right, let's jump into that first pillar. And you might be surprised to hear that it has nothing to do with physical training. Not at first. It wasn't built in a gym. It was forged way back in his childhood, in rural Minnesota. See, Jurek's most powerful tool, it wasn't his legs, it was his mind.
His dad, Gordon Jurek, had this simple, almost brutally direct way of looking at hard tasks. His philosophy was basically this: sometimes you just do things. That's it. No complaining, no overthinking, you just get it done. And that single idea, it became the absolute bedrock of his mental toughness.
And look, this wasn't just some vague childhood lesson he kind of remembered. No way. It evolved into a super concrete, practical method for dealing with absolute disaster during a race. So when he was faced with what should have been a race-ending injury, he didn't fall apart. He didn't panic. He had a process. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. Let's look at this in action. He's 44 miles into a 100-mile race. 100 miles. And he tears ligaments in his ankle. Race over, right? Not for him. Instead of panicking, he pulled out this exact checklist. It's a perfect example of taking this idea of mental strength and turning it into a real, practical, step-by-step tool for survival. Now, a strong mind is one thing, but you've got to have the physical fuel to back it up. And that brings us to the second pillar of Jurek's success, a pretty revolutionary change he made to his diet. This wasn't just about eating healthy. This was about unlocking totally new levels of endurance and recovery. And when I say transformation, I mean it was dramatic. He basically went from your standard Midwestern diet, McChicken sandwiches, steaks, pork chops, to something completely different. A meticulously plant-based diet, every single part of it designed for one thing: peak performance and faster recovery. You might be thinking this sounds really complicated or expensive, but it wasn't about that at all. His secret weapon meals, like his famous lentil mushroom burgers, were made from really simple whole ingredients that anyone can find. And just to be clear, this was not some short-term diet fad. This was a deep, long-term commitment. How committed? Well, get this. He'd been eating an exclusively plant-based diet for 7 years before he even showed up to the starting line of the Badwater Ultramarathon, which, by the way, is known as the world's toughest foot race. 7 years! Okay, so we've got mindset and we've got fuel, but there's a third, final piece to this puzzle. It's this idea that Jurek learned to completely reframe hardship. Instead of seeing it as something to run away from, he started to see it as the actual training ground for greatness. And just like his mental toughness, this endurance wasn't built on a running track. It was forged long, long before his first race. As a kid, he had to take on more and more responsibility at home, all while watching his mom's health slowly decline as she battled multiple sclerosis. So you have this really tough upbringing, and you combine that with a lesson from his high school ski coach, who had this saying, "Pain only hurts." Now, that might sound a little strange, but it wasn't about ignoring pain. It was about understanding it. It was about learning to see pain as just a sensation, something you can feel, acknowledge, and then move right past. So let's pull it all together. You've got the mindset, you've got the fuel, and you've got this hard-won wisdom about hardship. When you combine those three pillars, what you end up with is so much more than just a strategy for running. It's really a philosophy for life. Picture this. He's deep into a race, literally lying on the scorching hot pavement of Death Valley, and he asks himself the ultimate question. It's a question I think anyone who's ever faced a truly massive challenge has probably asked themselves at some point. And the answer he came to, it wasn't about the prize money or the fame or even about winning. It was so much deeper. He realized that running wasn't just, running. It was a practice ground for life. The ultimate lesson wasn't about being the first to cross the finish line.
It was about finding the profound value in the struggle itself.
If this topic has captured your interest and you'd like to dive deeper, the book is called Eat and Run by Scott Jurek.